Hey guys, it's Jonah here once again. You're watching Digesting Beer, and the first topic I'd like to talk about, and we'll probably talk about this in subsequent episodes because this is going to cause huge debate, and everyone's got their own point of view. What is craft beer? And for me personally, I like to use quotations, craft beer, because I think putting a description on beer is crazy. What does craft beer mean? Well, if you follow the Brewers Association, I will put the link down below. The Brewers Association state that craft beer has to be small, so production of beer, the brewery has to be small. So people like Sierra Nevada, Anchor, they're not craft beer because they're too big. But are they? A lot of people think they are. See, we're getting complicated already. The second thing is that they have to be independent, i.e. not a brewery that's owned by some conglomerate or, a bigger brewery, because a lot of places do that. And they try and pass their beer off as from small breweries, but it's not, because the money is from some big multinational corporation. InBev is a good example of that. They own loads of stuff. And the third thing is it has to be traditional, using traditional processes. But again, what does that mean? If you look back in history, there is also another coined term, real ale, and CAMRA, CAMRA, the campaign for real ale, that's where the real ale comes from, basically defined real ale as something that's been conditioned, cask conditioned. So even though you could have bottled conditioned real ales, they were mainly talking at the beginning with an ale that has a secondary fermentation in some sort of vessel. So you do your brew and then you add a little bit more sugar or whatever you're going to use, honey maybe, to create your carbonation in your beer. I know homebrewers today that have very, very good setups, and they don't do that at all. They keg their beer and then they force carbonate it. So they're only producing 5-gallon batches at a time. They're not craft brewers. Following the real ale, the campaign for real ale sort of montage. But it gets very, very complicated. I mean, size is a good thing. A microbrewery, another term that people use, or a brew pub, a pub that brews its own beer, and the two are so interlinked, or they could be interlinked. Would they be considered craft beer? Well, only if they use traditional fermenting methods. So if they're forced carbonating, it's not craft beer. But I know plenty of beers that you can get in the UK that are from America calling themselves craft beer, but when you look at the actual company, they are owned by, one of these bigger conglomerates like, well, I don't want to mention any names, but say InBev is a good example. And they're not making craft beer if you follow the definition. So for me personally, I like the term independent better than craft beer. Independent brewery. So one that doesn't have the purse strings of the brewery controlled by someone else. So they're making beer for their customers, for a pub, maybe, but they're not doing it for any other reason. And those type of breweries are very, very free. They can change recipes, they can do what they like, they can generate huge differences in their beer, which I think is a good thing. Whereas these big, massive corporate places, although they do change their recipe, and they do so, most years the recipe changes a little bit, they do all sorts of things like price setting and buying up their malts, buying up all their grain, their hops, basically to try and get something that's similar in taste to last year's, and it'll never be exactly the same because from season to season things are different. The other thing about craft beer, Oh, I'm getting into it. Hang on. Just have a beer break. Cheers and beers, everyone. Thanks for being with me here on digesting beer. I was going to say disgusting beer. That's a new term. Not very craft, unfortunately. Yeah. So the other thing about craft beer is, especially in the UK, craft beer seems to come in smaller bottles. You go to the pub and you have a pint of beer. You get a craft beer, especially crafted beer, and it costs the same as a pint. However, they're generally in 330ml bottles, so almost half a pint. But they seem to charge the money because it's craft beer, so they're using this term to make their product more expensive. And don't get me wrong, craft beer does not mean that it's any good. Some craft beers might be very good, they might be suited to your taste, but just because it's calling itself craft beer doesn't necessarily mean that it's good beer. Yeah? If you go to a shop and you buy some beers, you buy cans of beers from the macro brewery, the big brewery, and it's the one that you like, it's your staple brew. You drink those and you think, yeah, that's nice. But you buy a very expensive bottle of so-called craft beer, and it's basically the price of 2 or 3 cans by itself. You drink it and it's not all that great. So essentially you've wasted your money because the advertisers, the marketing men in those companies are trying to market it to you as being something amazing. If you go to the local market, the farmer's market, and you're supposed to buy things direct from the farmer, the same thing happens. They tend to be very, very expensive. There tends to be a markup because it's somehow fresh, it's somehow local or something like this. And if you go to the supermarket, you can get the same product for a lot cheaper. And you don't know, but that farmer might be supplying the supermarket with exactly the same product. Call me cynical if you like, but I don't necessarily buy it. That said, if you find a really good craft beer that you like, why not? Why not? It's all about what you like at the end of the day. But my friends, don't let yourself be conned by a term that's been created by marketing people. Anyway, that's my view. Please leave some feedback for me, because I'm sure I've opened a can of worms here. We might talk about this again. Till then, I'm going to digest some beer. Take care, guys.